Ever been laughed at in a room full of people who thought they'd already won? Ever watched family loyalty crumble the moment money and power entered the picture? This channel tells the stories no one dares to say out loud. Here, polished smiles hide betrayal. Perfect marriages conceal double lives. And silence is never weakness, it's strategy. You'll hear stories of women underestimated, mocked in public, and dismissed as insignificant, while quietly holding the truth that could destroy everything being celebrated. Families built on lies, husbands living secret lives, power traded for loyalty, love reduced to a transaction. These aren't fairy tales. These are stories where patience becomes revenge, and the final reveal turns laughter into fear. If you're drawn to emotional twists, hidden betrayals, and endings no one sees coming, you're exactly where you're meant to be. Crystal glasses clinked beneath chandeliers that cost more than the first apartment ever lived in. The merger party glittered with excess, confidence, and careless laughter. Every smile carried judgment, every glance measured worth. Conversations stopped just long enough to acknowledge the silent figure standing alone, then resumed with sharper humor and lowered voices. Weak, irrelevant, a woman left behind while powerful men built empires. A cousin laughed openly about how marriage sometimes turns into charity. An aunt offered pity dressed as advice, whispering that standing beside success requires knowing when to step aside. Even the brother, glowing with applause and praise, barely nodded, as if acknowledging a stranger who had wandered in by mistake. Across the room stood a husband polished to perfection, arm resting too comfortably around another woman. The same woman whose name appeared in deleted messages, whose apartment rent had been quietly paid from a joint account, whose promotion came right after confidential files were shared. That smile, once familiar, now looked rehearsed. The eyes avoided contact, but the tension was visible. Secrets always recognize the person holding them. Mockery cut deep, not because it hurt, but because it revealed how disposable loyalty becomes when money enters the room. Years of sacrifice were erased with laughter, long nights of support, silence, and trust, repaid with public humiliation and private betrayal. What no one noticed was the phone vibrating softly in a clutch purse, or the legal documents already reviewed, signed, and time-stamped. Or the email scheduled to release once the champagne toast ended, attachments detailing forged approvals, shell accounts, and a husband's signature appearing far too often on transfers never authorized. Power doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it sits quietly, absorbing every insult, waiting for the right moment. When a senior partner abruptly stepped away from the podium, whispers shifted into confusion. Faces tightened. The husband's phone rang next, color drained. The woman on his arm stepped back, suddenly unfamiliar with the man she thought she knew. Laughter vanished, pride cracked. The room that once felt suffocating now felt small. Walking toward the exit, heels echoed against marble floors that no longer impressed. Behind those doors, a celebration collapsed into suspicion, audits, and exposure. A marriage built on lies unraveled exactly where it was flaunted. They laughed first until the truth decided to speak. Family photos line the hallway like proof of something that never truly existed. Smiles were wide, arms linked, success framed as unity. That image was the family's greatest achievement, more carefully maintained than any relationship inside it. Loyalty here was never about love. It was about usefulness. At dinners, affection was measured by titles and bank balances. Praise flowed easily toward whoever had just closed a deal or bought a bigger house. Silence followed anyone who failed to impress. Conversations sounded warm on the surface, but every word carried calculation. Support was given only when it could be repaid with influence or money. Marriage was treated the same way. A husband, once celebrated as a perfect match, had been quietly rewriting vows behind closed doors. Business trips stretched longer, phone calls ended the moment footsteps approached. Joint plans turned into solo decisions. The family noticed but chose not to see. Betrayal was acceptable when it protected the image they sold to the world. What hurt most wasn't the affair itself. It was discovering how long everyone else had known. A sister-in-law's awkward smiles, a mother's sudden coldness, a brother's defensive jokes about ambition ruining romance. Secrets had been shared in private rooms, traded like currency, while loyalty was publicly demanded from the one person kept in the dark. Love became conditional. Stay quiet and remain welcome. Ask questions and become inconvenient. The greed grew bold. Financial documents appeared with missing pages. Accounts shifted without explanation. A signature showed up where consent had never been given. When confronted gently, reassurances came wrapped in gaslighting, claims of misunderstanding, accusations of paranoia, warnings not to damage the family's reputation. Reputation, always reputation. What they never realized was how closely everything had been watched, how patterns emerged when silence replaced trust, how records tell stories people try to bury. Every lie stacked neatly on top of another until the truth became impossible to ignore. The family believed loyalty meant sacrifice without recognition. What it really meant was obedience. When the truth finally surfaced, it didn't arrive with shouting or tears. It arrived through lawyers, audits, and conversations they couldn't control. The same relatives who once preached unity suddenly scrambled to protect themselves. The husband who hid behind charm and excuses found no one willing to lie for him anymore. The perfect family image cracked under the weight of its own deceit. And once the lies were exposed, loyalty finally showed its real price. That charming smile fooled everyone. At meetings, at family dinners, at parties filled with champagne and applause, he played the role flawlessly. The devoted husband, the ambitious partner, the man who had it all together. People admired him. Some envied him. Others defended him without hesitation. No one questioned the long hours, the sudden trips, the phone turned face down on the table. Behind closed doors, another life existed. Affection had slowly been replaced with distraction. Conversations ended before they began. Promises were postponed, then forgotten. The warmth that once lived in small gestures disappeared, replaced by impatience and carefully chosen silence. When questions surfaced, charm smoothed everything over. Stress was blamed. Work was blamed. Anyone but the truth. The truth lived in patterns. Late-night messages deleted but never fully erased. Hotel charges hidden inside business expenses. Transfers quietly moved from shared accounts into places that didn't belong to either of us. And the woman, always the same name appearing just often enough to matter, never enough to raise suspicion unless someone was truly looking. What made it worse wasn't just the infidelity, it was the alliance. The same relatives who mocked quietly at gatherings, who treated marriage like a stepping stone instead of a bond, were part of it. Advice was given behind backs, jokes were shared at someone else's expense. Family loyalty became a shield for betrayal. Protect the successful one, silence the inconvenient one. They laughed together while secrets stacked higher. Financial deception ran parallel to emotional deceit. Documents were signed without consent. Deals were made using shared trust as collateral. Every act of betrayal was justified as ambition, as necessity, as something that would eventually benefit everyone. Gaslighting became routine. Concerns were dismissed as insecurity. Evidence was minimized. Boundaries were called overreactions. The goal was clear: keep the image intact at any cost. But deception leaves fingerprints. Numbers don't lie when reviewed closely. Messages don't disappear completely. People slip when they believe no one is paying attention. The double life that felt so well managed began to unravel quietly, piece by piece, without confrontation or chaos. By the time smiles turned tense and confidence cracked, it was already too late. Allies became liabilities. Excuses stopped working. The man everyone admired stood exposed, not as a victim of circumstance, but as the architect of his own downfall. Some lives fall apart loudly. This one collapsed the moment the truth no longer needed permission to exist. Silence became the safest place to stand. While laughter echoed at dinners and mockery disguised itself as jokes, nothing was said. No arguments, no tears, no public questions. Patience looked like weakness to everyone watching. That assumption became the greatest advantage. Betrayal is loud when confronted, but devastating when observed quietly. Every lie was allowed to finish. Every excuse was met with calm acceptance. The husband grew comfortable, careless even. Confidence swelled as secrets stayed buried. The double life continued unchecked. Late nights explained away, unexplained expenses brushed off, alliances strengthened with relatives who valued success over truth. Behind that calm surface, patterns were being memorized. Dates aligned too perfectly, numbers repeated where they shouldn't. Signatures appeared where consent never existed. The same names surfaced in messages, transactions, and whispered conversations at family gatherings. What they thought was silence was really strategy. The mocking never stopped. Subtle glances, patronizing smiles, conversations that paused when entering a room, then resumed with forced lightness. Power was flaunted openly, as if untouchable. The husband played along, enjoying admiration, feeding the narrative of control and superiority. He believed nothing could happen without his permission. That belief was the mistake. No threats were made, no warnings given. Everything unfolded on schedule. Files organized neatly, evidence backed up twice, professionals consulted quietly. When the time came, the truth didn't arrive through confrontation, it arrived through official channels that couldn't be ignored. The reveal was swift and merciless. Accounts were frozen without explanation. A deal celebrated weeks earlier was suddenly under review. Phone calls went unanswered. Smiles vanished. The same people who laughed first began whispering in panic. Allies distanced themselves overnight. Loyalty dissolved the moment consequences appeared. The husband unraveled publicly, scrambling for control that no longer existed. Denials sounded hollow. Excuses fell flat. The charm that once protected him now exposed desperation. The family that once mocked stood stunned, realizing too late that silence had never meant submission. Walking away required no final words. Watching power crumble under its own corruption was enough. Revenge didn't need rage to be effective. It needed timing. They laughed while believing control was theirs. The silence simply waited until everything they built collapsed under the weight of the truth. If this story hit close to home, you're not alone, and this is just the beginning. Every week, more stories uncover hidden betrayals, family secrets, and the quiet strength behind calculated silence. Stories where truth always finds its way out, and power never belongs to the loudest voice in the room. If you believe revenge doesn't need screaming, if you know silence can be the sharpest weapon, and if you want stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next. Because some truths don't beg to be heard, they wait for the perfect moment to be revealed.